I imagine that adventurous spirit brought you into entrepreneurialism too, right? Like that. Is it that same feeling when you're starting a business?
It is, yeah. And there's a lot of similarities. And there's a lot of similarities to flying airplanes where, we got a little old red light on up here and we got an engine out. What are we going to do? In business on land, it's fairly safe. You pull over and you ask for help. Up in the sky, you could auger and take people with you. So there's that sort of pushing the boundary, but also playing within the confines of, societal parameters or airplane parameters that, like you said, Nick, I like to go up to that boundary and just kind of be like right there, right at the edge of, oh boy, that's where I like to live, actually.
I like what you're saying about pushing boundaries and also like breaking through like your fears and your barriers. I was listening to your story about like when you started Hydro Flask and you went to China. And I just love this because we talk a lot on the show about mindset. And here you are in this country, you can't speak the language, and yet you have to find this metal container that doesn't even exist at this point. So, I would love to know, like, what was your mentality at the time and what helped you from just not giving up and just saying, you know what, I'm done with this. This is not going to happen. I'm faced with all these barriers. Like, how did you push through that?
It was a big day when I got there for the very first time. And I really realized this was before Google Translate. This is before our phones had the internet on. These were flip phone and fax machine days. And there just wasn't as many people there to help speak English or anything. I remember thinking a little bit of me was like, fuck it. This is an adventure. And even if I don't come home with the chalice, even if I come home with nothing, at least I can say I've been to China and I tried. And so that was always kind of in the back of my mind, is that I knew I could go back and be a dive instructor or boat captain, quote unquote, worst case scenario. But the fact that I also really believe act boldly and unseen forces will come to your aid. And the fact that I was there in the factory, they told me no. And some dude just walks up and is like, hey man, I got a cousin. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense somehow. Like I fully believe that that's something I need to track down. And sure enough, like you just go 3 hours south to Hangzhou. Well, okay. Well, it turned out to be a 5-hour train ride, but I got to Hangzhou and like I was the only white guy there. And I'm thinking, well, this is good because I stand out. And so somebody's going to see me and somebody's going to offer help. And sure enough, she did. She walked up and she's like, you must be Travis. I'm like, yeah, awesome. Like somebody knows my name. So wow. Yeah, it's act boldly and unseen forces will come to your aid.
Man, I mean, not only are you going to another country to try to get things started up, it was 2009 when you started Hydro Flask, right? So that was not a great economic time. How did you push through and get that motivation to keep pursuing this when economic forces seem stacked against everybody?
That's a good question, Matt. And that's something that I have to remind myself that 08, 09 happened because we were kind of in a little bubble and it worked. I mean, we had a good product that was doing what we said it would do. We were asking, they back then they were $19.99 and $24.99 for the 18 and the 21 ounce. And a lot of my time, energy, and resources were spent with my head down working in and on and for the company. And I didn't really pay attention to outside forces. I still don't watch the news. I don't really listen to what's going on out there. I just did my damnedest to make sure that this was the best water bottle on the planet. And people said, hey, you know what? Times are rough, but I've got $20. I have $25. Here you go. I'm going to take a chance on you. They'd get it home. It would work. Their spouse, their kids, their neighbors would steal it. They'd come back. They'd buy 10 more. And so I I feel very blessed that we were able to start at such a rough time. But also I had a lot of people who would tell me, we're not going out to the bars. We're not, I don't stop by my coffee shop. I make coffee at home. I can now take coffee to work. I can't afford to go to, fill in the blanks, coffee shop, but I can make it at home. I can put it in a Hydro Flask. I can take it to work. And I actually feel a lot better for doing so. And I saved, $50 this week. So your bottle paid for itself. And so, yeah, that's kind of how. The tougher part was raising capital. That was when it really became challenging because people just weren't knocking on the door to give us money. And so we had to knock on doors. And so that's kind of where we started to fill it.
When you came up with the idea for Hydro Flask, like what was the specific problem that you were trying to solve? And then like as you went along with the product and you heard from people saying things like, oh, I make coffee at home now, so I have something to put it in and keep it hot. Like, were they coming up with uses for it that you didn't even think of?
So first I was just thirsty and I was doing deliveries. We had a sign company, sign, banner, screen printing, kind of a marketing agency in Oahu signs and screen printing. I was out doing Honolulu run, doing deliveries or whatever, picking up toner or whatever I was doing. And I went into the sporting goods store to get a water bottle because we lived on the beach and every day we'd have plastic wash up every single day. At first it was kind of fun to clean up and I kind of felt like a good Samaritan and I'm an eco warrior cleaning up the beaches. And then pretty soon it became completely overwhelming and expensive because our garbage can was now, we had 15 bags of garbage every week. And so I did not want to buy any more plastic bottles, no more single-use plastic water, but I'm thirsty. Go into the sporting goods store to get the only bottle I knew at that time from my rock climbing days was a plastic Nalgene bottle. And even they had BPA in them. They weren't quite sure what BPA was, but as a precautionary measure, they pulled them from the shelves and there were no bottles for me to buy. And I asked the guy, who's going to do this? And he said, nobody. I was like, I will. And it came in the back of my head. It came out my mouth and he laughed at me. And it's like, I saw the future and I was standing on stage talking about this highly successful water bottle company. I just wanted to keep water at its constant temperature because I climb mountains and I get to the top and the water's frozen. Well, that sucks because now I don't have any water. Okay, well, you just deal with being dehydrated. I go out surfing. I come back. I can't drink because the water's too hot. It burns. I can't drink. Okay, well, you deal with being dehydrated. I just wanted a consistent water temperature that I know if I put it in at this temperature, I'm going to be able to A, get it out because it's not frozen, and get it out, B, at a temperature where I can consume it. So that was kind of the underlying sort of conceptual idea. And then I figured, well, if I make a bottle that I want to use, maybe my brother will use it. Maybe my mom will use it. Maybe my dad would use it. Maybe my friends and family. And we got the samples and people are like, yeah, totally. We could do this and this and this. And then, yeah, like you said, Matt, the ideas just started to compound and I would have never thought of that. One of the coolest things I think that I would have never thought about myself was breast milk and feeding children. Like that was always that was the furthest thing from my mind. And yet every time we'd have the mothers tell us that story, it always was like, that's awesome. Like we're really helping to sustain life here. That's rad. How good does that feel?
I got to tell you, Travis, your Hydro Flask does exactly that. Like, so my sister, she lives in the Bay Area. And so she was telling me just before this interview, she was just like, I swear by this Hydro Flask. Like, I went into my office and I forgot my Hydro Flask in the car. So for 8 hours, I'm working and it's like 90 degrees out here. I come back after work, get in the car, I open up my Hydro Flask and the ice is still there. It's still like super cold. I couldn't even believe it. Nothing melted. So, for viewers, it is the truth. Hydro Flask really does work.
Yeah. It's awesome. Yeah, we would have, and then the opposite of that too was like at Mount Bachelor, people would put in hot tea or hot coffee at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning. They go ski all day. They're freezing cold. They come out, they get in the car, they open up the coffee, they take a sip and have to spit it out because they just burnt the hell out of their tongue. It's like, and we would get these sort of complaints that they worked too well. It's like, okay, well, you have to kind of reconceptualize this whole liquid intake concept because you can't put it in at that hot, or you have to leave the lid off. And so those early day complaints were actually kind of fun to get.
That could be a great marketing tool. Like, actually share the complaint. People always post the positive reviews, post the negative one that says your product works too well.
A 1-star review. It worked too well.
Yeah, that's great. So aside from that, what were some other early challenges or setbacks that happened on the way to building what would become a global billion-dollar brand?
I think a lot of the setbacks happened with financing, just financing growth and managing the human aspect of growing the business that big, that quick. We were 600% a quarter growth. And we were constantly having to hire and fire people. My quote unquote partner, she would run off every single time it got too difficult. And so she'd leave me there. The biggest day that she left me was we had 40,000 rusted bottles and a 5-year lease on a 10,000 square foot facility that we had just signed. And we had 20 day laborers and we had an employee. The employee stole the money and fired the day laborers. I just got back from China for a month where I had SARS or swine or pig or whatever the flu du jour was. Where I was in the hospital, I'd have to check myself into the hospital at night. And then in the morning, I'd get up and go work at the factory. And then they'd drop me off at the hospital. I got home and 40,000 rusted bottles. Like, dang, and so that was tough, just figuring out how the product's going to work. Like, there weren't really machines making double wall vacuum insulated water bottles at that time. So we had to kind of build out the factory side of things also. We had to kind of piece together and cobble this and that together to kind of learn what we were doing. And that, that was a lot of work. I mean, it was a lot of work spending that much time in China and then coming back and trying to reacclimate to, okay, I'm back in the United States and I'm here to sell what I just did over there. And then at the same time, build a business and hire employees and maintain employees. And yet I have to fire employees. And then we go from selling 1,500 bottles, which was our first run, to 40,000 a month in like 6 months. And it's like, oh shoot, well, how are you going to afford 40,000 bottles every single month? And that's when it just was like, holy cow, this is bigger than I kind of, not bigger than I had anticipated, but like I had no business, like real big business experience. Like I didn't know what was going to happen.
So when you first started, you went to like box stores and you were trying to sell your product that way. When did you make a switch and say, you know what, we need to like kind of focus more on the digital aspect of selling our product than just going to store?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. It was always sort of neck and neck, kind of a 1-to-1 always, but it wasn't always easy to do the online. 2008, 2009, 2010, they're just, Shopify, I don't know if it even existed, but it must have been in its infancy because I didn't know anything about it. And so we would try to find these shopping cart companies that would build, we could build a website and they were like $25 a month, $100 a month, or $500 a month. Okay, well, we'd start at the $20 level, then we move up to the next level, and then we get up to the top level, and we get up to the top level and go, this isn't it. This isn't working. This isn't right. And so I'd start bringing in-house people to build an actual e-commerce website. And you had to buy this tool and you had to buy that tool and you had to have some dude in the back sitting there putting it all together. And after 6 months, you realize homeboy doesn't know what he's doing. Like ex-nay him, we get a marketing company. The marketing company promises to build the website for $250,000. We'll do all this big package. They don't know what they're doing because it just doesn't really it's not easy. So it was easier, therefore, to go direct to consumer via retail. And that's kind of how I had always kind of seen it was, all right, we're going to sell at Whole Foods, REI. Everybody was a potential client or customer also. That was the other issue. Like anybody who drinks liquid is going to want one of these bottles. Well, you have to narrow down your segment there, Travis. Why? Who am I going to exclude? Who am I going to say, no, you can't use this bottle. You can't drink water. So it kind of became overwhelming in that sense, but I was very fortunate to have really strong sales reps, and sales reps kind of spread like, I don't know, I was going to say rabbits or wildfire or some sort of hybrid thereof. They multiply quickly. You have one rep and they know 12, and then next thing you know, you have 13, but they all know once. And next thing you know, you have 500 sales reps getting you into these stores. People are going to the stores to buy them. And then 2011, 2012, it started getting easier and easier to build an actual website that actually could sell and move product. And so they always kind of ran concurrently. Facebook was just starting. I mean, the day that we registered, actually technically started in Hawaii first and registered the business there. The day we registered is the first day I picked up my own Facebook account, and I had no interest. I had no idea. It wasn't really something that, we had MySpace back then and things like that. But even though I wasn't interested, and I still am not, I knew that we had to hedge our bets and cover as much ground as we possibly could, because somebody may be interested in Facebook. So we hired a social media manager, that was separate from graphic design and marketing also.
And how long did you stay with Hydro Flask?
I had it for, I think, maybe 5 years.
5 years? Okay. Yeah. What made you decide to move on?
I got tired. I kind of tapped out also, as far I kind of capped out. Like I had done everything that I had set out to do. I kind of relate it to when I was flying airplanes, and there was a finite number of airplanes that I wanted to fly. And once I flew them, it was like, all right, now I've done it, been there, done that. I got the t-shirt and I don't really want to go back and get another one. And so with Hydro Flask, we were in the military, we're in REI, we're in Whole Foods. We got the NBA contract for a year, the year they went on strike, but nonetheless, we were international. We were in England and Europe, and we were in Korea, and we'd been to the top of Everest, and we'd kind of got there, and my brother had just died. My first wife and I had just gotten married. We just got done kind of taking care of my ex-partner, and that was a whole big thing. And I just ready for the next adventure.